Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I just wanted to start off by saying I apologize for not posting on the schedule I promised. I had a feeling this would happen since I started school, so I will revert back to posting once a week. I plan on posting every Friday, however, if I do finish Friday's video early, I will try to post an extra video that week. I will probably try and keep the extra video more on the relaxed side, while Friday's video will actually have an intent to it. Anyway guys, today we are going to be talking about tips and tricks on how you can get a better drawing. These tips and tricks are going to be things I've learned from both art and personal experiences, so I will put a short disclaimer out saying that even though these tips and tricks work the best for me, they are not the only ones out there, so yeah. Since I am on a bit of a time crunch with this video, I will not be able to film myself applying all of these techniques to an actual piece, so I will apologize for that in advance. However, I do plan on releasing some tutorials in the future of me actually applying these techniques. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoy this video, and without further ado, let's get down to it. Now, one thing that you need to know is that before you start drawing, you need to sketch out the picture before you start. Here I'm going to be talking about ways you can sketch out before you draw. Now, a good method to getting a good sketch if you don't know how to draw at all is using the grid method. Basically, I think I learned this in math class when we had to do a project on graphs, where you had to find a cartoon and completely sketch it out on a bigger graph. And I found that this was a really good method to getting a good sketch if you did not know how to draw. Now, this next technique, I'm just going to have a short disclaimer. I am in no way trying to say that you should trace people's artwork or do any kind of plagiarizing using this technique. I just use this as a very last resort in case I'm on a time crunch, and that is tracing. Now, I know this is a very controversial topic, but I am going to explain why I use tracing. For example, the tracing light technique, it's kind of hard to explain, but basically I print out a picture, color on the back of it with pencil, flip it over, and then I go over on top of the photo with colored pencil, just regular pencil. And the thing about this technique, and the reason why I don't give it a specific name, is because it's kind of you kind of have to cross your fingers and hope it works. Yeah. Because as you can see, it didn't really work this time for me. Usually it does, but then again, you have to realize it doesn't work all the time. So that's usually when I'll have the tracer come in handy. I'll put the reference photo under my piece of paper, and then I trace it. I only use tracers if I absolutely have to. I don't use it to copy anyone's artwork. I just use it to simply get the reference photo the way I like it. For example, I'm attempting to draw out this portrait of one artist friend of mine. She's super nice and so talented. But anyway, since I am not the best at portraits already, and I haven't really practiced doing realistic portraits just yet, making them resemble someone, I did have to use the tracing technique just so I could make them actually look like themselves. And I'm really sorry, Mia. I feel really bad. I promise I won't leave the sketch looking like this. I know it doesn't look the best. It's just one of those things. I'm leaving this as the initial sketch, and then off camera, I'm going to fix it and add in more details so it actually looks like you. I promise this isn't the final drawing. This is just this is just a sketch. Anyway, on to the next technique. This next technique for sketching out a drawing is drawing the negative space. In art, negative space is any space in between or around the subject of an object. So as you can see from this reference photo, I decided to trace the negative space digitally just so you could see it better. But as you can see, this is what I mean by negative space. Now obviously your lines would probably be a lot cleaner than mine. I just had a little bit of trouble just because I was doing this on my phone and not on an actual tablet for digital art. And the last way you can make your sketches overall better is just simply using a tutorial. We have so much access to the internet these days, why not take advantage of it? I know some people who may take some shame in using tutorials, but honestly, there's nothing you should be embarrassed about. Everyone has to learn one way or another, and personally, that's how I learned. Because if none of my methods work for you, maybe someone else's will. So now that we've talked about ways that you can get a better sketch, let's talk about the ways you can enhance your drawing and make it look more realistic. One way artists make their drawings more realistic is by adding value into their drawings. There are many techniques for adding value, and I'm going to go over some of them in this video. Now, the first method that you can use to add value to your drawing is hatching and cross-hatching. I decided to put the two together just because they're a bit interchangeable, and they're kind of like a complement of each other. So I will start off with hatching. What is hatching? It's basically a series of straight or curved lines drawn beside one another to give the illusion of value. And depending on the shading effects you want, you can make the individual lines and hatching sets as far or as close together. In the hatching set, you can clearly see that there's individual lines, but in other examples, you'll also see that you can put them very close together and you can barely see any spaces in between. And one thing to note about hatching is that it tends to be easier because you're working with only one set of lines, so it's a really good choice for making realistic hair, and I tend to use that a lot in my portrait drawings. Cross-hatching is a shading technique in which one set of line crosses over or overlaps the other set. As you can see, I will be using the pencil strokes and putting them in opposite directions. You can see that in one example, I put the lines pretty far apart, but in the other example, you can barely see any white spaces, and only if you look really close will you be able to see that the pencil marks are in different directions, making it look more like a solid tone. Cross-hatching lines can have noticeable spaces, or appear to have a solid tone, as you can see. Anyway, let me flip to my other side of my notes. Oh yes. Cross-hatching can create a very smooth transition of values, and it's great for drawing human skin because the two sets of overlapping lines allow values to flow smoothly in various directions by continuously extending or adding a few extra lines. Overall, out of all of the techniques that one could use to add more value into a drawing and make it look more realistic and visually appealing, I tend to use the hatching and cross-hatching technique just because I kind of favor it a bit more. I'm not quite sure why. Just something about it looks very appealing to me. It could just be a personal preference. However, whether you want to try cross-hatching or hatching is completely up to you. Here are some things you should remember. You should vary the density. You can place them either as far apart or as close together as you want when you're shading lines. If you want to make them darker, you want to put the lines a bit closer together, and if you want the tone to be lighter, place the lines farther apart. You can also use different grades of pencils, hard or soft. This sounds a bit contradictive, but hard pencils actually create lighter values than soft pencils do. And I remember when I first tried out Prismacolors, I was pretty surprised to find that the value of the color was a bit darker than I expected it to, and that was because they're soft cord pencils. One way that my art teacher told me that you could remember the difference between hard and soft pencils is that charcoal, which is pretty soft, it can create really dark values. Another way you can vary the value is simply just changing the pressure of how hard or how light you are holding and pressing the pencil into the paper. You can't do this so much with ink, you can only do it to a certain extent, but with pencil, you seem to have almost an endless amount of possibilities for this. Now, the second way you can add value into your drawings and make them look more realistic is blending. Now, the reason why this is the second most used technique when I am trying to make a more realistic drawing is because hatching, in a way, comes hand in hand with blending. Because you have to, in some shape or form, use some lines before you use something to blend it out. That's why I use hatching, cross-hatching, and blending as my main techniques, just because I tend to favor that a lot. Now, there are a couple ways you can blend out drawings if you're just using a pencil or charcoal. One way is using a blending stump, or that's also known as a tortillon. This was actually given to me in my art kit from my art teacher. However, if you're a cheap person like me and just do not want to go and buy one for yourself, there are also other alternatives. One way I heard was that you can use your finger. However, it didn't do much for me personally. I think if I worked at it a little more and had a bit more patience, I probably could have gotten some results. But in my opinion, the tortillon just got the job done a lot quicker. However, I did find more success using a Q-tip. It created similar effects that the tortillon did. I did have to work for it a bit more, but in the end, they actually looked pretty similar. I also heard that using the little, those little makeup, I want to say, not brushes, but the really cheap ones that come in a makeup palette. I heard that using those works in blending out as well. But anyway, as you can see right now, I am varying the density and and the pressure whenever I'm trying to blend it out. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought here. My cat's bothering me right now. But anyway, if you are using colored pencils, however, you can't really... Oh, stop doing that, Jack. Sorry, that's my cat. If you are using colored pencils, however, the only way I know of that you can blend it out, unless there's some other art hack, but the only way I know of is using a white colored pencil. Now, I'm not saying that you can't use a tortillon, but they also stain, so unless you want to have to buy an individual one for each colored pencil that you use, I would just use one for pencil drawings since they are a similar color, and just use a white colored pencil for colored pencils. The third way to add value into your drawing is called stippling. So basically, this method is basically you repeatedly create small dots on your page to create some sort of value, I suppose. I personally do not like using this technique a lot because I have very little patience, and I think if you were to stipple a whole piece, that would require a lot of patience. However, I will say that this is a good method in some cases. For example, when I'm drawing these scales, I think it does a really good job of adding value into the piece and overall making it look better. The last way I believe you can make a better drawing is adding texture to it. In drawing, we use line, form, value, and texture to enhance the illusion of realism or to imply the surface quality of an object. By definition, texture refers to the way something feels or its surface characteristics. The surface quality determines the way light is reflected to the eye from the surface of the object. Texture can be matte, which means it absorbs light, or glossy, which means it reflects light. We use texture for relief or emphasis of objects, interesting ways to show value changes, and enliven the surface quality of your work. And I'm sorry I can't get into more detail. If you want a video of me explaining more about texture, I will try and do that. I just am running out of time. Anyway, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. I apologize again for not being able to demonstrate these techniques, but once I start making some drawing tutorials, I will actually demonstrate them in a better way. As always, if you want to check out my artwork that I do not post on this channel, you can follow my Instagram, both my regular and my journaling one. I will link both of them in the description box down below. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, and don't forget to turn on that notification bell so you know exactly when I post. And I will see you guys next video. Thanks for watching.